everyone, and welcome to another episode of You've Got to See This, your guide to what's playing in theaters and at home. I'm your host, Brad, joined by my co-host, Blake. Blake, how was this week for the movies for you?
It was better. We're getting a little better. Just the later we get in the year, the weeks are going to keep getting better.
Yeah, thankfully that is the truth. So
we're finally out of that January, February horror bullshit. It's over.
No more pushed release movies as far as January and February goes. So first off, we're going to be talking about Onward. In Onward, two brothers set out on an epic quest to find a gem that will bring their dad back to life for one day. This one stars Tom Holland, Chris Pratt, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Octavia Spencer, and everyone does a fantastic job bringing their characters to life through the voice performances, but especially Tom Holland and Octavia Spencer. They are so good in this movie. Everyone's so good in this movie, but I just loved both of their characters so much. There's some other great voice cameos from Lena Waithe and Ali Wong as well in one scene that's really funny. The story is truly original as expected from Pixar and starts out as a father-son story and becomes something bigger than that. It's incredibly emotional, moved me to tears multiple times, again, which is to be expected from a Pixar movie. It isn't quite up to par with other instant classics like Up or Coco, but it still packs an emotional punch and it's a total blast from start to finish. I had a lot of fun with this movie. There was also a really great Simpsons short that plays before this in theaters that was hilarious and a lot of fun and puts you in a really great mood leading into the movie. I think Onward is an awesome family film that has something in it for everyone, even if it isn't quite up to the pedigree of other Pixar films. I loved it, and I highly recommend it to anyone that likes a good family story or fantasy adventure story. I give Onward a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, this one, like you said, the voice acting here is just really good. I think that Pixar consistently, year after year, gets a little bit better with their voice acting. I guess it's just the direction that they're given, but their voice acting is just the characters are fully brought to life through their voice acting performances. I think especially from Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, I think that they have really good chemistry together. Whether they were recording at the same time and recording sessions together, I don't know, but it feels that way because their chemistry is just is palpable. You really feel it through the screen and through the animation. Again, Disney's quality of animation here is just breathtaking. The water and the scenery and these beautiful backgrounds and the forests and everything. It's just like it's truly stunning. It's amazing what Pixar is able to do because, like, these other animation studios, they don't even come close. They don't hold a candle to the quality. I'm talking about the pure quality of animation that Pixar has and that Disney has. It's really stunning. It's beautiful. I think that it really helps bring the entire world to life whenever everything surrounding it, the way the trees look, the way that the water looks, it all makes it feel very mystical and otherworldly, which is what you're going for in this world. I love the ultimate lesson of this movie being not so much about what you thought it was going to be about, but being about something else. And I think that it's more about the lessons we pass on to each other. And I think that again, the messaging here is just really good. It's great stuff for children. It's good stuff for the entire family. The only thing that I can really take away from this movie is just there's two small critiques I have of it. Not every single joke lands, which is weird in a Pixar movie because usually Pixar is like 10 out of 10 on every single one of their jokes. Like they all land. They're all really funny. Like even on rewatch, they're great. And on the first watch of this, I was just kind of like, even in the theater, like there people just weren't laughing at some parts, which is like feels very weird in a Pixar movie for some reason. And then that leads into my second point that takes away from this movie is that it is a Pixar movie. So because of that, I have to, whether it's fair or not, compare it to other Pixar movies. And it's just not quite up to snuff with other Pixar films, like you were saying with Up, Coco, Inside Out, any of the Toy Story movies. Like all of these movies are just like top tier, like classics. Could have won Best Picture. Some of those got nominated for Best Picture. And like this movie isn't. It might get a nomination for Best Animated Film at the end of the year. Like I'm sure it will, but it's more in the vein of like Monsters University, Cars, like that kind of stuff. It's kind of more comparable to those movies, which is in comparison to other animated movies, just incredible. Like, it's still a very, very good film with great messaging, great acting, great action too. I think that the action builds and builds. I think the very beginning of the movie doesn't start out super strong, but I think the movie gets a little better as it goes on, and the action at the end of the movie I think is some of the best stuff we've seen from Pixar, because they're not usually really action heavy, but this one felt really action heavy, and I really appreciated that. But yeah, overall I think that in comparing it to other Pixar movies, it's not one of the better ones, but in comparing it to all animated films, it definitely is one of the best animated films that we're going to get in a while. But I'm going 4 out of 5 as well.
Awesome. So next, we're going to talk about The Way Back. In The Way Back, a former high school basketball star returns to his old school as a coach while dealing with alcoholism. This one starring Ben Affleck, Janina Gavankar, Michaela Watkins, and Al Madrigal. Ben Affleck does a phenomenal job in this movie as a broken alcoholic man, and I know Affleck himself has had problems with drinking before, so I'm sure this hit incredibly close to home for him, and is also why he's so incredibly convincing in this role too. The supporting cast is good, but there are no real standouts other than Affleck in this one. The story is your pretty straightforward standard sports drama with some unexpected turns thrown in that I thought were extremely well done and handled really gracefully. There are several incredibly emotional scenes that deal with some very heavy subject matter, and I don't want to ruin which part I'm talking about for those that haven't seen it yet, so I'll leave it at that. It exists in this space directly between being a drama about alcoholism and being a sports drama, and both of these genres really work well together. The camera work in this movie is really great and helps push the story along nicely. It's paced really well and comes in at a comfortable 1 hour and 48 minutes. The only real letdown here is that the last 15 minutes or so of the film, when it starts to wind down, it just kind of ends without much fanfare. I would have liked to see a little bit more of the last basketball game and more of Jack's journey, but instead the movie just kind of ends. Other than that, I think it's a pretty strong story of searching for redemption, even if it is a bit formulaic, and Affleck's performance alone makes this one worth the price of admission. I give The Way Back a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you were saying. Ben Affleck is really, really good in this movie. I think that this movie was really personal for him, and you really feel it through. I think that he either pick the script or help with the script in some way with this movie, and I think the whole movie just feels like something that he just went through, because we know about some of his struggles with alcoholism and things like that, and in this movie it feels very therapeutic for him, kind of in the way that like Honey Boy was for Shia LaBeouf, and I think that he gives one of his best performances in this movie. But I think that outside of his performance, the rest of the movie is kind of formulaic. Like it's the basketball team, and they're kind of like, none of the players really stand out. There's not really like a specific player on the team that like I look to and I'm like, man, that person's story was different from what I've seen in a sports movie before. They're all kind of generic, almost stereotypes of basketball players. I don't know, I just feel like they could have done a little bit more with that. I just feel like that this whole movie, it felt like there could have been a little bit more with this and a little bit more with that. But I think that like on the surface level, it is a very good performance. I think it is competently directed. I think it's an interesting script, where the way that it bounces back and forth between being this sports story and this alcoholism story. But ultimately, I don't think that the movie really knows which one it is at times, and I think that the end of the movie really shows that, because the end of the movie kind of takes this weird choice where it doesn't really choose to focus on the basketball or choose to focus on his alcoholism. It kind of just resolves everything very, very quickly. All of the issues seem to be resolved, and then it just ends very abruptly, and it just like left me with such a weird feeling. I didn't really have any of the catharsis that I wanted. I didn't have any of the like emotional punch that I guess I wanted this movie to have. But Ben Affleck is really good. I think there's some really funny moments in this where he's like, you know, cussing out everyone on the team, and then it'll pan over, because it's a Christian school, it'll pan over to the youth minister on the basketball team or whatever. Like there's some really good funny moments for sure, but I don't think there's anything particularly great with the sports story itself. And I that's kind of weird for this director, because he's made very good sports movies. That's kind of what he's known for at the beginning of his career, is he made great sports movies. And then this one is just kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of lacking something. I didn't really have the emotional impact that I wanted it to have. And like I said, whenever it just fizzles out at the end, and then just everything's kind of resolved very quickly and very conveniently, and there's not really any conflict really. Like, everyone just kind of supports him and everything, and then it's just kind of over. And it kind of left me with a weird feeling. So I'm going 2.5 out of 5.
Okay. So let's jump over to what's playing at home. Over on Netflix, we have Spencer Confidential. In Spencer Confidential, a disgraced former cop is released from prison and immediately gets involved in the murder investigation of 2 police officers. Blake, what did you think of Spencer Confidential?
It's really, really dumb. It's really cheesy. It's incredibly lazy. I cannot believe that Peter Berg directed this movie, because with movies like Lone Survivor, Deepwater Horizon, and Patriots Day, those movies are masterpieces. They're incredible, true story films that he brought out the 3 of the best performances in Mark Wahlberg's career. All 3 of them are in Peter Berg movies. And then this movie feels like we were saying before, I feels like a Tim Story movie. It feels like this ride along type of movie. Like, it's so cheesy and weird. Like, it feels like a movie that does not belong on Netflix. It feels like I've talked about before movies that are like straight to DVD or straight to streaming. That used to mean a really bad thing, and it doesn't really mean that anymore. Netflix kind of got away from that. But then they still release movies like that Ben Affleck, Anne Hathaway movie that we saw last week, and then Spencer Confidential. Like, I don't understand, because these movies seem like movies that would be just straight to Redbox that I would see, that like Nicolas Cage would do because he's broke. Like, there's nothing in this movie that seems like Peter Berg did it, that seems like Mark Wahlberg should be doing it. Like, I get that Mark Wahlberg usually does like pretty bad stuff, but like, why is Bokeem in this? And like, it's so weird, because it's so lazy, it's so generic. It assumes that you're a child who's never seen a movie before. Like, it literally just assumes you're brain dead. There's constantly music cues happening, and they're so like weird and out of place and forced, and I kind of couldn't stand it. This movie is very, very Boston, like obnoxiously so Boston. It's just a bunch of macho dudes like screaming at each other and trying to out tough one another in a bathroom, and they start punching. Like, that's pretty much this entire movie. It tries to capture that like buddy cop dark comedy vibe, and it really, really misses the mark horribly bad. I think that Post Malone is the only really shining moment of this movie. Post Malone is actually like in the opening scene, and he like is pretty good, and then he comes in later on and he does a pretty good job. I think he does better acting than Mark Wahlberg does at any point in this movie, and he's Post Malone. This movie literally has a cut every 0.25 seconds. It's the opposite of 1917. There's a car chase happening, and rather than showing this car, then showing that car, it'll show this car from 97 different angles, and then show the other car from 110 different angles, and it is headache inducing. I couldn't stand this movie. Like, halfway through, we paused it because I had to use the bathroom, and like, I thought we were like at the end. I thought we had like 10 minutes left, and then it said an hour, and then we watched like 6 more hours of the movie, and then it said there were 30 minutes left. It just, that we were in a time warp. I couldn't believe it. It was so bad, but it wasn't. I'm going 1 out of 5, because I still think that there was like one joke that was okay, and some of the, other than the cuts every 0.25 seconds, there were some interesting or slightly interesting action moments.
I can respect that. So this one stars Mark Wahlberg, Winston Duke, Alan Arkin, Eliza Schlesinger, Post Malone, Bokeem Woodbine, and Mark Maron. So you would think on paper that's a pretty awesome cast, and it is a good cast, but it's completely wasted in this movie because everyone is a walking cliche. This whole movie is just one giant cliche after another. You see what's coming in every scene before it happens. It assumes you can't figure out what's going on for yourself, so it spoon feeds every pertinent piece of information, even as going as far as to showcase Mark Wahlberg's thoughts, but through very basic note-taking as a means of exposition, multiple times in this movie. It's both a movie and basically a commercial for the city of Boston, with more Boston-related music cues than I've ever seen in a movie. There's a big quote-unquote twist that's seen coming from the very first scene in the movie. It's so stupid. I can't believe this is a Peter Berg movie. I thought this movie was way below Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg both, and should have been way better than it was on paper with this cast and this idea. But it's just, like I said, one cliche after another. I I'm really glad I never have to see this movie again, because it was just so, like you said, headache inducing, just super hyperactive, and needed someone to rein it in, and it just didn't happen. Nothing in this movie worked for me. The only person that I liked in it was Post Malone, and I think that's more from being surprised that he did a good job acting than anything. But yeah, I'm in the same boat. I got to give Spencer Confidential a 1 out of 5 as well.
Yeah, it's the dude that made Patriots Day made this movie. That's insane.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
One other thing that I wanted to shine a light on, we had 2 of my favorite shows of the year end this Sunday and Monday. We had The Outsider on HBO end, and we had McMillions on HBO end. So both of those are available for binging now, and I would say that not only is The Outsider my favorite show of 2020 so far, it is one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations ever. I love the book The Outsider. It's in my top 5 favorite Stephen King books, and this is probably my favorite television adaptation of King to date, easily.
Yeah.
It's super, super, super dark, so know that going in. It deals with the murder of children, and it's very, very dark, but it is one of the most fascinating, interesting stories that King has ever written. They bring it to life in a really unique way on the show. They make a bunch of changes actually from the book, but all of the changes really worked for me in the context of the show. I really loved that. And then McMillions, if you like interesting documentaries or docuseries, McMillions is one of the most incredible docuseries I have ever seen, period.
Yep.
One of the most unbelievable stories with just the craziest cast of characters that you've ever seen in a documentary, and it's all real. It's all 100% true. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are making a movie of this story. It's so crazy. So I would definitely recommend both The Outsider and McMillions. If you have HBO, it's worth signing up for an HBO account just for those 2 shows alone.
Absolutely. And whenever you do start McMillions, you're not going to want to stop it, because every episode ends with you like, are you fucking kidding me? This can get crazier. Every single episode until the last episode is just like, what are you talking about? This is still going. And even like going into it, you and I were like, okay, this might be like a HBO like hour and a half long movie, or like a 2-part documentary series, but it's a 6-part thing. We're like, how the fuck are they going to do this? And it keeps you like fully engaged all the way through, because this is one of the craziest stories I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so crazy. You can't even begin to explain the story of this show, because it's so insane. So if you like good shows, definitely check both of those out. If you like good movies, go and check out Onward. Go and check out The Way Back. Maybe skip Spencer Confidential. But other than that, we want to thank you so much for joining us for another episode. We'll be back next week with more thoughts on what to watch. Until then, be sure to subscribe, give us a review, and we will see you next time.